Beloved chosen one, before you go one step further into this message, I need you to pause wherever you are right now and take one slow breath. Because the way you found this message tonight was not an accident. You did not stumble upon these words by chance, scrolling absent-mindedly through 1,000 other things. Somewhere in the quiet places of heaven, a decision was made long before this moment that you would be here, listening, right now, at exactly this hour of your life. Chosen one, hear me clearly. You are not forgotten. You have never been forgotten. And tonight, I have been sent to tell you something that your spirit has been waiting to hear for a very long time. You won. Heaven has heard the quiet cries of your heart. The nights you lay awake wondering if love would ever find you. The mornings you woke up and reminded yourself to keep believing even when the evidence around you said otherwise. And I am here to tell you plainly, your lifetime partner is being sent. I know how that might sound. Maybe you have heard promises like this before, and they did not come to pass in the way you expected. Maybe you have grown tired of hoping, tired of watching others walk down aisles and hold hands across dinner tables, while your own hands remained empty. Maybe there is a quiet ache in you that you have learned to hide so well that even those closest to you do not know how heavy it has become. But chosen one, I want you to know that God sees what is hidden. He sees the tears you cry into your pillow when no one else is watching. He sees the strength it takes for you to smile at weddings that are not your own. He sees every version of you that has tried to convince yourself that being alone is simply your portion in this life. And tonight, he is interrupting that story. There is a reason this title reached you. There is a reason your heart is stirring even now as these words are spoken. Somewhere deep inside you, a small flicker of hope is being reignited, and I want you to let it burn. Do not push it down. Do not tell yourself it is foolish to hope again. Hope is not foolish, chosen one. Hope is the very language of faith, and faith is exactly what is required to receive what heaven has already prepared for you. Let me remind you of something important before we go any further. Your value has never been determined by your relationship status. You are not incomplete because you are waiting. You are not less loved because your story has taken longer than you imagine. In fact, some of the most beautiful love stories in Scripture were the ones that required the longest waiting, the deepest trust, and the greatest surrender. And what I am about to share with you tonight is one of those stories, a story about a young man named Isaac and a young woman named Rebecca, and a journey across the desert that was orchestrated entirely by the hand of God before either of them ever laid eyes on the other. This story matters to you tonight because it shows you something profound. It shows you that heaven can be working on your behalf, in places you cannot see, in conversations you are not part of, in journeys being taken by people you may never even meet, all so that the right person can arrive at the right place, at the right time to meet you. While Isaac waited quietly in the land of Canaan, someone else was already traveling, already being led, already being prepared to bring him what he needed. He did not have to chase. He did not have to manipulate circumstances or force connections that were not meant to be. He simply waited in obedience, and heaven moved on his behalf. Chosen one, could it be that the very thing you have been striving for, straining for, exhausting yourself over, is something that heaven is already moving toward you, quietly, patiently, without your full awareness? Could it be that your waiting has not been empty space, but sacred space, a season where God was doing unseen work, preparing both you and the one who is coming, so that when you finally meet, everything will fit together the way only heaven can arrange it? I want to awaken something in you tonight. Not a desperate striving, not an anxious searching, but a settled, confident awareness that you are seen, You are known, and you are being cared for by a God who does not forget his promises. The same God who directed a servant across hundreds of miles of desert to find Rebecca at a well is the same God who knows exactly where your person is right now, what they are doing, what they are learning, and how their path is being aligned with yours. This is not a message about waiting passively while life happens to you. This is a message about waiting actively, with faith, with expectation, with your heart positioned to receive rather than to grasp. There is a difference between chasing after love out of fear of being alone and standing still in confidence while heaven brings love to you in its appointed season. Tonight, I am asking you to choose the second posture. Stand still, chosen one, not in passivity, but in holy confidence. Your heart settle. Let your spirit rest. Because what is coming to you was not something you had to manufacture. It was something heaven had already decided long before you were even aware you needed it. As we move through this message together, I want you to hold on to one truth above all others. You are not overlooked. You are not too late. You are not too much, or too broken, or too tired to be loved well. You are chosen, deeply and specifically, and the timing of your story has never been a mistake. Every delay you have experienced has been preparing you for a love that will actually last, rather than one that would have crumbled under the weight of impatience. So breathe again, chosen one. Let your shoulders relax. Let the tension in your chest loosen just a little. Because what I am about to walk you through is not just an ancient story from long ago. It is a mirror held up to your own life, a reminder that the same God who moved mountains for Isaac and Rebekah is moving mountains for you right now, even in this very moment, even as you listen to these words. Let us begin. If this message is already reaching into places in you that have been closed for a long time, imagine what it would mean for someone you love to hear it too. Share this video right now, not later, right now, with one person who is walking through a season they cannot explain. Like this video as your first act of agreement, because when you press that like, you are telling heaven and everyone watching that this word found its mark. Subscribe to this channel so that every time a word like this goes out, you are in the room to receive it. Click the notification bell so heaven's message finds you first. And if this ministry has brought you something real, something you have carried with you, the link to support what we do is in the description and in the pinned comment below. Every offering you sow into ground like this is a seed with eternal reach. To understand what heaven is doing in your life right now, we must first travel back to an ancient desert, to the tents of a man named Abraham, whose faith had already been tested through decades of waiting. Abraham had grown old, and his son Isaac had grown into a man, but Isaac remained unmarried, living quietly in the land of Canaan. Abraham understood something profound about legacy and destiny, that Isaac's wife could not simply be chosen from the surrounding nations who did not know the God of Abraham. This union needed to be one that heaven itself would orchestrate. So, Abraham called for his oldest and most trusted servant. And in the book of Genesis chapter 24, we read the account of what happened next. Abraham instructed his servant to travel back to his own country, to his own relatives, and to find a wife for Isaac there. The servant, feeling the weight of this responsibility, asked Abraham what he should do if the woman was unwilling to follow him back. Abraham answered with words of deep faith. He said that the Lord, the God of heaven, would send his angel before the servant and would make his journey successful. Notice this carefully, chosen one. Before the servant even took his first step on this long and uncertain journey, Abraham had already declared, by faith, that heaven would go ahead of him. This is such an important pattern for you to notice. The success of this journey did not depend on the servant's cleverness or charm or persistence. It depended entirely on the movement of God ahead of the moment. And this is precisely how your story is unfolding right now. Long before you ever meet the person heaven has prepared for you, God is already going ahead of that meeting, preparing hearts, aligning circumstances, working behind the scenes in ways neither of you can yet perceive. The servant departed with 10 camels and many gifts, traveling a great distance to the city of Nahor in Mesopotamia. When he arrived, he did something remarkable. He stopped by a well outside the city in the evening, at the very time when the women of the city would come out to draw water. And there, standing by that well, he prayed a very specific prayer. He asked God to give him a clear sign. He said that he would ask a young woman for a drink of water from her jar, and the sign that she was the one God had chosen for Isaac would be that she would offer to draw water not only for him, but for his camels as well. This detail is worth pausing on, chosen one. The servant did not simply ask for someone kind, or someone beautiful, or someone convenient. He asked for someone whose character would reveal itself through an act of generous, unrequested service. Offering water to a stranger was reasonable. Offering to draw enough water for 10 thirsty camels, which would have required many trips back and forth to the well carrying heavy jars, was an act of extraordinary willingness and kindness. The servant was praying not merely for a match, but for the right heart. And before he had even finished speaking this prayer in his own mind, Scripture tells us that Rebekah came out, carrying her jar on her shoulder. She was described as very beautiful, a young woman who had not been intimate with any man, and she went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came back up. The servant ran to meet her and asked her for a little water from her jar. She quickly lowered her jar and gave him a drink, and then she said something that must have made the servant's heart nearly stop in wonder. She said that she would draw water for his camels also, until they had finished drinking, and she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran back to the well again and again, until all 10 camels had been satisfied. Chosen one, imagine standing there as that servant, watching the exact answer to your prayer unfold in real time, in a stranger who had no idea she was being watched, no idea she was fulfilling a prophecy spoken just moments before, no idea that her simple act of kindness at a well was about to change the entire trajectory of her life. She was not performing for an audience. She was not trying to impress anyone. She was simply being who she already was, generous and quick to serve. And that authentic character was exactly the sign heaven had chosen to reveal her identity. The servant then asked whose daughter she was, and discovered that she was the granddaughter of Abraham's brother Nahor, meaning she was from the very family Abraham had sent his servant to find. The servant bowed his head and worshiped the Lord right there, declaring that the Lord had led him on the journey to the house of his master's relatives. He then gave Rebekah gifts of gold and was invited to her family's home, where he recounted the entire story of his journey and his prayer at the well. When Rebekah's family heard the account, they recognized that this thing had come from the Lord, and they could not speak against it, either good or bad. They called for Rebekah and asked her directly whether she would go with this man. And in one of the most quietly powerful moments in all of Scripture, Rebekah answered simply that she would go. She did not know Isaac. She had never seen his face. She knew only that heaven had orchestrated this encounter in a way too precise, too specific, too perfectly aligned to be coincidence. And so she chose to trust the God who had clearly been moving on her behalf, even before she knew she was part of the story. Rebekah traveled back across the desert with the servant And as they approached the land of Canaan in the evening, Scripture tells us that Isaac had gone out to the field to meditate. He lifted his eyes and saw camels approaching. Rebekah, too, lifted her eyes and saw Isaac, and when she learned who he was, she covered herself with her veil. And Isaac took her into his tent, and she became his wife. And Scripture tells us something tender in its final line about this account, that Isaac loved her and was comforted after the loss of his mother. This, chosen one, is the foundation upon which the rest of this message is built. A servant sent on a mission, a prayer answered before it was even fully spoken. A woman found at a well who did not know she was the answer to another man's future. And a meeting that had been arranged by heaven long before either party understood what was happening. This is not simply an ancient story. It is a pattern that heaven still uses today, and it is a pattern being used even now in your own life. There is a truth that has been hidden from most people, and it is not hidden because it is complicated. It is hidden because it is inconvenient for a world that profits from your self-doubt. The truth is this: the silence you have been living inside, the season that has felt like stagnation, like being overlooked, like being held at the edge of something that never quite arrives, that silence has been doing something to your brain, something measurable, something real. And understanding what it has been doing is the first step toward reversing it. Earlier in this message, I briefly mentioned something. Now I want to give you the full picture. When researchers began studying the brains of people who had endured prolonged seasons of isolation, spiritual pressure, and sustained uncertainty, they found something that no one had quite expected. They found that the brain, under those conditions, begins to suppress its own highest operating frequency. Not permanently, not irreversibly, but measurably. The brain, in its effort to protect you from the overwhelming weight of a season you were never designed to carry alone, turns down the very signal that would allow you to see clearly, think creatively, solve problems with ease, and recognize the open doors that are already right in front of you. It is like a city that has been under siege for so long that it begins to turn off its own lights to conserve energy. The city is still there, the power is still there, but the lights are dim, and in the dimness, it is very easy to believe that the city itself is dying when it is simply waiting. That highest frequency has a name. Researchers call it gamma, and the science surrounding it has been building for decades in ways that the mainstream world has been slow to absorb. Gamma brainwaves operate at the fastest measurable rate of any brain frequency, above beta, above alpha, above theta, above delta. When the brain is producing strong gamma activity, the result is not hyperactivity or agitation. The result is something closer to what mystics have described for centuries as illumination, sudden clarity, the kind of knowing that arrives not from analysis, but from somewhere deeper than analysis, the sensation of everything falling into place. What neuroscientists call peak cognitive function, and what chosen ones simply call finally being able to see. Here is what the research has confirmed. Children produce gamma in abundance, naturally, effortlessly, without trying. This is why children learn languages in months that take adults years. This is why a child can sit with a problem and arrive at a creative solution that a room full of adults missed entirely. This is why children dream vividly and believe impossible things with perfect confidence. They are not naive, they are gamma-rich, and then the world begins to work on them. Disappointments accumulate, the rejections arrive, the seasons of waiting set in. The people who were supposed to see them overlook them, and slowly, quietly, the gamma dims. This is the hidden truth about the waiting season that no one tells you. It does not just cost you time, it costs you frequency. And when your frequency is suppressed, your perception narrows. Your sense of possibility contracts. The very gifts that were placed inside you at the beginning become harder to access, not because they left, but because the signal carrying them has been turned down low. Dr. James Rivers has spent over 30 years studying this specific intersection of neuroscience, cognitive performance, and human potential. His work has been affiliated with some of the most rigorous research environments in the world, including MIT. And after 3 decades of research, what he arrived at was not a complicated protocol or an expensive intervention. What he arrived at was something elegantly simple. He discovered that the brain does not need to be forced back into gamma. It needs to be guided there, gently, consistently, in a window of time short enough that the nervous system does not resist it. That window, the window he identified through years of careful study, is 7 minutes. 7 minutes is what it takes for the brain, when given the right auditory signal, to begin to synchronize with the gamma frequency it was born to access. The mechanism is called brainwave entrainment. It is not a metaphor. It is a documented neurological phenomenon in which the brain, exposed to a precisely calibrated external frequency through sound, begins to mirror that frequency internally. The brain is a responsive organ. It listens, and when it hears the right tone at the right frequency delivered in the right way, it begins to shift. Not because it is being tricked, because it is being reminded of what it already knows how to do. The audio experience Dr. Rivers developed from this research is called the Genius Wave. It is 7 minutes long. It requires nothing from you except a pair of headphones and a willingness to sit still. No meditation experience, no visualization practice, no special knowledge, just 7 minutes of allowing your brain to be guided back to the frequency it has been waiting to return to. And here is what I want you to hold alongside everything I just said. In the last part of this message, I asked you to sit in 7 minutes of complete silence as a practice. I asked you to simply allow. I want you to understand now that that practice was not arbitrary. That 7 minutes of stillness was your nervous system beginning to remember. It was the preparation. What the Genius Wave does is take that willingness, that openness you already demonstrated, and give it a precise neurological pathway to travel. I have heard from people who sat with this for the first time and described the experience in language that sounds almost spiritual. A woman who had been carrying the weight of a prolonged season of professional failure and relational loss told me that after her first 7 minutes with the Genius Wave, she sat in the quiet afterward and felt, for the first time in over a year, that she could actually think. Not think harder, think clearly. Like something that had been pressed against a window had finally been let inside. Within 3 weeks, she had made a decision she had been paralyzed about for months. Not because the Genius Wave made the decision for her, because her brain was finally operating at the frequency where the answer was visible. I know that some of you are sitting with a question right now. You are thinking that $39 is not nothing, and you are right. It is not nothing. I want to honor that. If this season has been hard financially as well as emotionally, then every dollar carries weight, and I do not take that lightly. But I want to ask you something. How much has the suppressed frequency cost you already? How many decisions have been made from a place of narrowed perception? How many open doors have you walked past because the gamma was dim and you simply could not see them clearly? The Genius Wave is not an expense. It is a restoration. And $39 is the number it costs today through the link in the pinned comment below. The standard price for the Genius Wave is $49. Today, through the single link pinned in the comments below, it is available to you for $39. It comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee, not 30 days, 90. Dr. Rivers built that guarantee into the product because he is not asking you to take a risk. He is asking you to take a restoration. And if after 90 full days you do not feel that something in you has shifted, you will receive every dollar back. No argument, no process, just a full refund. There is one thing I need to say clearly before we move forward. There are imitation versions of this product appearing in other places online. I want to protect you from that. The only legitimate source for the Genius Wave is the single link in the pinned comment below this video. Do not search for it independently. Do not purchase from any other source. The link in the pinned comment is the only one I can stand behind, and it is the only one connected to the full guarantee I just described. I also want you to know that the availability of this pricing is genuinely limited. The $39 access point is not a permanent offering. The number of people who can receive it at this price through this particular link is finite. I am not saying this to create pressure. I am saying it because I would rather you know now than find the link later and discover the window has closed. If something in you already knows this is a yes, do not wait. The link is in the pinned comment below. Now let me bring you back to the larger story that is unfolding in this message, because the science we have just walked through and the spirit of what this season is asking of you are not two separate conversations. They are the same conversation. Your brain has been turned down. Your silence has been costly. And what is waiting on the other side of this season is not just a return to who you were before. It is an arrival at who you were always supposed to become. And that arrival requires that you first be willing to be honest about what the waiting has taken from you, which is exactly where we are going next. Now, let us slow down and ask what heaven is truly saying through this ancient story and why it speaks so directly into your life today. The story of Isaac and Rebekah is not simply a historical account meant to be admired from a distance. It is a spiritual pattern, a blueprint revealing how God moves when He is preparing to bring two lives together, according to His perfect timing rather than human effort. The first spiritual truth hidden within this story is that heaven often works on your behalf long before you are aware of it. Isaac did not send the servant himself. Isaac did not travel across the desert searching for a wife. Isaac remained in the field, in a posture of quiet meditation, while an entire journey unfolded on his behalf without his direct involvement. Chosen one, this is deeply significant for your own life. You may feel as though nothing is happening, as though your waiting is stagnant and silent, as though heaven has forgotten to move on your behalf. But just as Isaac had no visibility into the servant's journey while it was happening, you may have no visibility into the ways God is currently preparing your future partner, softening their heart, teaching them lessons they need to learn, positioning them geographically, spiritually, and emotionally for the moment when your paths will finally cross. The second spiritual truth is found in the servant's prayer at the well. He did not pray a vague, general prayer. He prayed with specificity, asking God for a sign that would reveal character, not merely convenience. This teaches us something important about how to pray for what heaven has for us. It is not wrong to ask God for specific confirmation, for signs that reveal the true heart of the person being sent to you. In fact, Scripture models this kind of specific, faith-filled prayer as an example for us to follow. When you pray for your partner, you are not being unreasonable in asking for someone whose character reflects kindness, whose actions reveal generosity, whose spirit is aligned with service rather than self-interest. This is exactly the kind of prayer the servant prayed, and exactly the kind of answer heaven delivered. The third spiritual truth is that Rebecca did not know she was the answer to someone else's prayer while she was simply living her ordinary life. She went to the well that evening the same way she had gone many evenings before, to draw water for her household. She was not standing there, anxiously scanning the horizon for a sign that her future husband's servant was approaching. She was simply being faithful in her daily responsibilities, and heaven met her in the middle of her ordinary faithfulness. Chosen one, this speaks powerfully into your present season. Your future partner may, at this very moment, be living an entirely ordinary day, going about their responsibilities, unaware that heaven is preparing to bring your paths together. And in the same way, you are not required to manufacture extraordinary circumstances in order to be found. You are simply required to remain faithful in your ordinary life, trusting that heaven knows exactly where and how to bring the two of you together at the appointed time. The fourth spiritual truth is found in Rebecca's response when her family asked whether she would go with the servant. She said simply that she would go, even though she had never met Isaac, even though she was stepping into an unknown future, based entirely on the evidence of God's clear hand in the events that had just unfolded. This is a picture of faith responding to confirmed evidence rather than blind desperation. Rebecca was not desperate for a husband, grasping at any opportunity that presented itself. She recognized the unmistakable hand of God in the specific and detailed way the servant's prayer had been answered, and she trusted that same God to lead her into what came next. This is such an important distinction for you to hold on to, chosen one. Waiting for your partner does not mean waiting passively without discernment. It means waiting with your eyes open to recognize the hand of God when it becomes evident, and then responding to that confirmed leading with courage rather than fear. When heaven brings your person to you, there may be signs, confirmations, and a settled peace that testifies to the rightness of the connection, much like the signs that convinced Rebecca's family that this union had come from the Lord. The fifth and perhaps most tender spiritual truth is found in the very last line of the story, where Scripture tells us that Isaac loved Rebecca and was comforted after the loss of his mother. This tells us that the partner heaven sends is not simply a romantic addition to your life, but often becomes a source of comfort in areas of grief, loss, and emotional need that existed long before that person arrived. Isaac had been grieving. His mother Sarah had died, and Scripture makes it clear that this loss weighed on him. Rebecca's arrival did not erase that grief, but it brought comfort into the midst of it. Chosen one, whatever grief, loss, or wound you have carried through your season of waiting, know that heaven is not sending you a partner merely to fill a void of loneliness, but to bring genuine comfort and healing into places that have needed tending for a long time. What God is saying to you through this ancient story is this: your waiting has never been wasted time. While you have been living your life, working, praying, growing, and sometimes grieving, heaven has been moving quietly on your behalf, preparing a specific person whose character, whose heart, and whose timing will align with yours in a way that could only be described as divine appointment. You are not required to force this. You are not required to chase it into existence through anxious striving. You are simply required to remain faithful, to remain open, to remain discerning, and to trust that the same God who directed a servant cross a desert to find Rebecca at a well is directing your story with the same precision and the same love. If this message has seen you today, if even one of those 4 signs landed in a place that felt true, I want to gently invite you to like this message so it travels to the next person who is ready to be named and seen the way you just were. Leave a word in the comments below, any word at all, as a way of marking that you were here. and that you showed up for yourself today. Share this with someone who has been struggling to find stillness in a noisy season. Someone who does not yet have the language for what they are carrying. And if you want to bless the next person who finds their way to this recognition, there is a link in the pinned comment where you can pass something forward. Choose to subscribe not as a platform action, but as your decision to remain part of this community of chosen ones who are waking up together. If you recognize yourself in what I have just described, if those 4 signs feel less like a list and more like a mirror, type the word ready in the note below. Let it be your declaration that you are no longer calling this season a punishment. You are calling it what it actually is, a positioning. Now let us turn to something practical, chosen one. Because spiritual truth is only fully alive when it becomes something you can recognize and apply in your daily life. I want to walk you through specific signs that heaven is preparing to bring your lifetime partner, and I want to speak directly into the particular circumstances many of you listening tonight are currently walking through. The first sign to watch for is an unusual sense of peace settling over areas of your life that used to feel restless. Many people, in the season just before their partner arrives, notice that their anxious striving in this area begins to soften into something calmer. If you have found yourself less desperate to check dating profiles, less anxious about attending every social gathering, hoping to meet someone, and instead more settled into contentment with your own life as it currently stands, this is often a sign that heaven is doing quiet work behind the scenes, shifting your posture from grasping to receiving. The second sign is a season of personal growth that feels disconnected from romance entirely. Often, right before heaven sends a partner, a person goes through a period of deep personal development, healing old wounds, establishing healthier boundaries, growing in their relationship with God, or discovering new confidence in who they are. This growth is not incidental. It is preparation. Just as Rebecca was simply living her life faithfully at the well, unaware that this faithfulness was preparing her for the moment the servant would arrive. Your current season of growth may be the very preparation heaven is using to ready you for the person who is coming. The third sign is renewed hope after a season of discouragement. If you have recently felt a small flicker of hope reigniting in your heart regarding love, even after telling yourself you had given up on it, pay attention to that flicker. Discouragement often precedes breakthrough, and the reawakening of hope is frequently a signal that heaven is moving closer to fulfill what has felt delayed for so long. Now, chosen one, I want to speak specifically to those of you carrying particular burdens tonight. If you are someone who has waited a very long time for a life partner, and you have begun to wonder whether love has quietly passed you by while you were not looking, I want you to hear this clearly. Your timeline is not a measurement of your worth. Isaac was not young when Rebekah arrived. Scripture tells us he was around 40 years old, well into what his culture would have considered a delayed timeline for marriage. And yet the love that arrived was not diminished by the delay. It was, if anything, deepened by the years of preparation that preceded it. Your years of waiting have not disqualified you. They have been preparing both you and the one who is coming for a love that will be able to withstand real life, rather than a love built too quickly on infatuation alone. If you are someone healing from a broken relationship or a past betrayal, afraid to open your heart again because the last time you did it was met with pain, I want to speak tenderly into that wound tonight. Rebekah's story required her to trust a stranger, a servant she had never met, based entirely on evidence of God's hand in unfolding events. Trust after betrayal is not built the same way. Trust is built before betrayal. It requires evidence, it requires time, and it requires the gentle patience of a God who does not rush your healing simply because you are ready to move forward with your life. Heaven is not asking you to force yourself into trusting again before you are ready. Heaven is asking you to let Him rebuild the broken places in your heart first, so that when your partner does arrive, you are able to receive their love from a place of wholeness rather than fear. Healing is not a delay in your story. Healing is part of your story. If you are someone who feels invisible in love, overlooked while others around you seem to find their person with what looks like effortless ease, I want you to remember Rebecca standing at that well, drawing water the same way she had drawn it many evenings before, with no audience, no recognition, no fanfare. She was not the woman everyone was watching. She was simply a woman being faithful in an unremarkable moment, and it was in that very ordinariness that heaven chose to reveal her as the answer to someone else's prayer. Being overlooked by human eyes does not mean being overlooked by heaven's eyes. In fact, some of the most profound divine appointments in Scripture happen to people who felt entirely unremarkable. In the moment, David tending sheep while his brothers stood before the prophet, Mary, an ordinary young woman in an unnamed village, Rebecca drawing water at an ordinary well. Heaven has a consistent pattern of choosing the overlooked and revealing them, in due time, as chosen. The road ahead of you, chosen one, may still have some distance left to travel, but I want you to notice something about the servant's journey to find Rebecca. It was long. It crossed deserts. It required patience and faith along the way, with no guarantee of success until the very moment it was fulfilled. But the length of the road did not diminish the certainty of the outcome. The servant arrived exactly where he needed to be, exactly when he needed to be there, because the God who sent him on the journey was also the God directing every step along the way. Your road may feel long tonight. It may feel uncertain, but the length of your road is not evidence that you have been abandoned. It is evidence that heaven is doing careful, thorough work, preparing every detail so that when you finally arrive at your well, at your appointed place, everything will unfold exactly as it should. Let me share with you a story, chosen one that I believe will illustrate everything we have been speaking about tonight, in a way that touches the heart even more deeply than principles alone can do. This is the story of a woman I will call Naomi, not the Naomi of Scripture, but a woman whose life mirrors so many of yours listening tonight. Naomi grew up in a loving home, and from a young age, she believed that love would come easily to her, the way it seemed to come easily to everyone around her. But as the years passed, she watched friend after friend fall in love, marry, and begin families, while she remained standing at the edges of those celebrations, smiling through toasts at weddings, while quietly wondering when her own story would begin. By the time she reached her early 30s, the ache had become something she carried constantly, a low hum of sorrow beneath even her happiest moments. There had been one relationship years earlier that had promised everything and delivered devastation instead. She had trusted a man completely, given him access to the most vulnerable parts of her heart, and when the relationship ended in betrayal and deception, something in her closed like a door slamming shut in a storm. For the next several years, Naomi built walls so high around her heart that she barely noticed she was doing it. She told herself she was simply focused on her career, on her friendships, on her faith. But underneath the busyness was a woman terrified of being hurt again in the same way. During those years, Naomi found herself drawn deeper into her relationship with God, not because she expected Him to fix her loneliness, but because she needed somewhere safe to bring her pain. She began journaling her prayers, and one recurring theme emerged in those pages. A prayer not for a partner to arrive quickly, but for her heart to be healed regardless of when a partner arrived. She prayed, quite simply, that she would become a whole person before she ever became someone's wife, so that whoever eventually came into her life would receive a woman who was healed rather than a woman still bleeding from old wounds. This season of inner work lasted longer than Naomi expected, nearly 3 years of quiet, unremarkable growth. She attended therapy. She rebuilt her relationship with God from the ground up. She learned to set boundaries she had never known how to set before. She began to enjoy her own company again, taking herself to dinner, traveling alone to places she had always wanted to see, discovering that she was, in fact, a whole person capable of a rich and meaningful life, even without a partner beside her. Slowly, without her fully realizing it was happening, the walls around her heart began to soften, not because she forced them down, but because healing had quietly done its work. It was during this season, at a small gathering hosted by a coworker, that Naomi met a man named Daniel. He was not what she had imagined her future husband would look like, not the type she had been drawn to in the past, and if she had met him during her earlier, more desperate years of searching, she likely would have overlooked him entirely, too focused on chasing a particular idea of what love was supposed to look like. But this version of Naomi, healed and settled and no longer grasping, noticed something different about Daniel. He was kind in quiet ways, patient in conversation, generous with his attention, without expecting anything in return. He reminded her, though she did not realize it at the time, of the kind of character the servant had prayed for at the well so many centuries ago. Someone whose true nature revealed itself through simple, unforced acts of kindness. Their relationship developed slowly, without the frantic intensity of her earlier relationship, and Naomi found herself grateful for that slowness. She had learned, through years of healing, that love which arrives gently and builds steadily is often love that lasts. Daniel proposed nearly 2 years after they met, and as Naomi stood at their wedding, she found herself thinking back over the long years of waiting, the season of heartbreak, the years of inner work that had felt, at the time, disconnected from any romantic outcome at all. She realized then what she had not been able to see while she was living through it, that every single one of those years had been preparation, not punishment. Heaven had not been ignoring her prayers during her season of healing. Heaven had been answering them in the only way that would actually last, by making her whole first, so that the love she eventually received could be received fully, without fear standing guard at the door of her heart. Chosen one, I share Naomi's story with you tonight, because I believe pieces of her journey may mirror pieces of your own. Perhaps you, too, are in a season that feels disconnected from romance, a season of inner healing, personal growth, or quiet faithfulness that seems to have nothing to do with love arriving. I want to remind you that this season is not separate from your love story. It is the foundation of it. Just as Rebecca's faithful, ordinary evening at the well became the very moment, Heaven chose to reveal her as the answer to another man's prayer. And just as Naomi's quiet years of healing became the soil in which a lasting love eventually grew, your current season, however ordinary or difficult it may feel, is not disconnected from what heaven is preparing to bring you. It is part of the preparation itself. Do not despise the season you are in, chosen one. Do not look at your healing, your growth, your patience, your faithfulness in the mundane responsibilities of your daily life, and assume these things have nothing to do with love finally arriving. Heaven often does its deepest work in exactly these unremarkable moments. preparing both you and the one who is coming, so that when you finally meet, you will meet as two whole people, rather than two people desperately grasping at each other out of fear and loneliness. Trust the process you are in right now. Trust the timing that has felt so long and so uncertain. Because just as it was for Rebecca and just as it was for Naomi, heaven is preparing something for you that will be worth every single day of the waiting. There is a road, chosen one, that I want you to picture clearly in your mind right now. It is the same road the servant traveled all those centuries ago, stretching out across miles of desert sand, uncertain in its outcome, long in its duration, and yet utterly directed by the hand of God from the very first step to the very last. I want you to think of your own life right now as a road very much like that one. You may feel as though you have been walking for a long time without seeing the destination clearly. You may feel tired in places, uncertain in others, wondering some days whether the road even leads anywhere at all. But I want to remind you tonight that the road the servant walked did not need him to see the destination in order for it to be real. It only needed him to keep walking in faith, trusting the God who had sent him. Your road has not been wasted, even in the seasons that felt like wandering. Even Israel's 40 years in the wilderness, a road that seemed to stretch on without purpose, was later understood as a road of preparation, teaching an entire generation to trust God for provision, for direction, and for timing. Every step you have taken through disappointment, through seasons of singleness that felt heavier than you let others see, through moments of comparing your journey to those around you who seemed to reach their destination faster. Every one of those steps has been part of a road that heaven is still directing, even now. I want you to notice something about the servant's journey that is easy to overlook. He did not travel that road alone. Scripture tells us he brought servants of his own and camels laden with gifts, everything necessary for the journey ahead. Heaven does not send you down your road empty-handed either. Along your own road, you have been given companions, whether friends, family, mentors, or moments of unexpected kindness from strangers, all placed there to sustain you for the distance still ahead. And you have been given gifts too, though perhaps not gifts of gold and silver. You have been given the gift of your own growing character, patience you did not have years ago, wisdom you have gained through hardship, discernment that has sharpened through disappointment. These are the gifts heaven has placed in your hands for this journey, preparing you not just to arrive at your destination, but to arrive there as someone capable of receiving what waits for you when you get there. There will be moments on this road, chosen one, where the path seems to fork in directions that confuse you. Perhaps you have wondered whether you should pursue a connection that felt promising but ultimately led nowhere. Perhaps you have questioned whether staying faithful to God's timing was truly wiser than taking matters into your own hands. I want to remind you that the servant, upon arriving at the well, prayed specifically before acting. He did not simply approach every woman who came to draw water and hope for the best. He waited, watched, and prayed for clear confirmation before moving forward. This is the posture heaven is asking you to hold on your own road. Not passivity that refuses to engage with life, but discernment that waits for confirmation, rather than forcing outcomes out of fear or impatience. Some of you listening tonight have grown weary of this road specifically because you have watched others take shortcuts that seem to work for them, entering relationships quickly, marrying young, appearing to bypass the long waiting you yourself have endured. I want to gently remind you that every road is different, and the length of someone else's road says nothing about the quality of the destination waiting at the end of yours. Abraham and Sarah waited decades for the promise of a son. Jacob served 14 years for the woman he loved. Even within Scripture itself, the length of the road varied dramatically from person to person. Yet each of these roads led to a fulfillment that was worth the distance traveled. Your road is not a failed version of someone else's shorter journey. It is your own road, walked at your own pace, directed by a God who knows precisely how much distance is required to prepare both you and the one who is coming. I want you to consider, too, that the servant's journey did not end simply with arriving at the correct city. Arriving at Nahor was not the completion of his mission. He still had to stand at the well, still had to pray, still had to watch for the sign, still had to have the conversation with Rebekah, still had to be received by her family, still had to travel the entire distance back to Canaan before the journey was truly finished. Your road, too, may have several stages remaining before its completion, and I want you to release yourself from the pressure of believing that arriving at one milestone means the journey is already at its end. Healing is a milestone, but it is not the final destination. Growth is a milestone, but it is not the final destination. Each stage of your road is preparing you for the next, and heaven is patient with the process even when you feel impatient with the pace. Perhaps tonight you find yourself in a particularly difficult stretch of this road, a season where hope feels distant and the destination feels imaginary rather than real. I want to speak directly into that weariness. The servant, somewhere in the middle of his journey, likely faced nights of exhaustion, moments where the destination felt impossibly far away, stretches of sand that seemed endless in every direction. Scripture does not record his doubts, but human experience tells us that any journey of that length would have included moments of uncertainty, and yet he did not turn back. He did not abandon the mission simply because the road grew difficult in the middle of it. He kept walking because the instruction he had received before departing came with the assurance that God would go before him. That same assurance travels with you tonight, chosen one. God is not waiting at the end of your road wondering whether you will make it. God is walking ahead of you, already present at the destination, already working out the details, already arranging the meeting that has not yet happened, but is already being prepared in ways you cannot currently see. Keep walking, chosen one, not with anxious striving, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows the road has been mapped out by a faithful hand. The distance remaining may be shorter than it feels tonight. It may be longer than you would prefer, but regardless of the exact measure of miles still ahead, the road you are walking is leading somewhere good, somewhere prepared, somewhere heaven has already marked with your name and the name of the one who is coming to meet you there. If this message has been meeting you in a real place, I want to invite you to press like, not as a gesture toward this channel, but as an act of choosing to be part of that movement, of saying yes to the idea that what is moving toward you is also meant to move through you towards someone else. Drop a word in the comments as a signal to every other chosen one, watching that they are not sitting in this alone. Share this with someone who is still in the thick of their waiting season and needs to know that the ground is already shifting, because sometimes the most powerful thing a chosen one in the threshold can do is reach back for the one still in the middle of the will. Choose to stay at this table by subscribing, because the next message that comes will be building on everything that has been laid here, and you will not want to have to search for it. And if you feel moved to sow into the ground that grows something for the next person finding their way here, the donation link is in the pinned comment below, and what you extend there does not belong to a channel. It belongs to the next chosen one who needs this message and has not found it yet. Type the word "receive" in the comments if you can feel, even at the edges, that the ground beneath your feet is shifting. Not because everything is resolved, because something is moving. And you are not going to let this moment pass without marking that you were here when it began. There is a moment just before the sun rises, chosen one, when the sky is still dark, and yet something in the air has already begun to shift. The birds sense it before the light ever breaks the horizon. The temperature changes slightly. There is a stillness that feels different from the stillness of the deep night. A stillness pregnant with the promise of what is about to come. I want you to sit in that image with me for a moment, because I believe it describes precisely where many of you are. Standing right now in your journey toward the partner heaven is sending. You may feel as though you are still in darkness, still in the long night of waiting, still unable to see any visible evidence that morning is near. But I want to remind you that dawn does not announce itself loudly in the middle of the night. It arrives gradually, quietly, almost imperceptibly at first, until suddenly the light has changed enough that you realize morning has actually begun. Many of the signs we spoke of earlier, the settling of anxious striving into peace, the season of unexpected personal growth, the small flicker of renewed hope, these are the pre-dawn signs. The subtle shifts in the atmosphere of your life that indicate morning is closer than the darkness around you might suggest. Consider the story of Zechariah and Elizabeth, an elderly couple who had waited their entire lives for a child, long past the natural point where such a promise seemed possible. Their night had stretched on for decades, far longer than most would consider reasonable to keep hoping. And yet in the fullness of time, in what Scripture describes as heaven's appointed moment, the angel Gabriel appeared to Zechariah in the temple, with the announcement that his prayer had been heard. Their long night of waiting, which had felt endless, and perhaps even hopeless in its later years, was suddenly broken by the light of a promise fulfilled. I want you to notice that their dawn did not arrive on a timeline that made sense according to ordinary human expectation. It arrived according to heaven's timeline, which operates by a different measure entirely. One that considers not just possibility, but readiness, not just desire, but the fullness of preparation on both sides of the promise. Chosen one, your dawn is coming according to that same heavenly measure. It may not arrive at the moment that feels most convenient to you, or at the age you once assumed would be the natural time for love to arrive, or according to the timeline you mapped out for yourself years ago before life took the turns it has taken. But just as morning always follows night, regardless of how long that particular night has stretched on, the dawn heaven has prepared for you is not in question. Only its timing remains hidden, and even that timing is being held carefully in hands far wiser than your own. I want to speak now to the quiet anxiety that often accompanies long seasons of darkness. The fear that perhaps this night is different from all other nights, that perhaps morning has somehow forgotten to come this time. This fear is understandable, especially after years of watching the horizon without seeing any change. But fear, however understandable, is not always an accurate reporter of truth. The prophet Elijah once sat under a broom tree in complete despair, believing his ministry had failed and his life was no longer worth continuing, only to be met by an angel who fed him, allowed him to rest, and eventually led him to an encounter with God on Mount Horeb, where his strength and purpose were entirely restored. Elijah's darkest night, the one where he felt most convinced that all hope was gone, was immediately followed by one of the most significant encounters with God recorded in all of Scripture. His despair was real, but it was not the final word on his story. And your despair, however real it feels tonight, is not the final word on yours either. Let me remind you gently that dawn light does not erase the night that came before it. It does not pretend the darkness never happened. Instead, dawn light transforms the darkness into something with meaning, revealing that every hour of that long night was leading somewhere, was part of a larger day that had been planned all along. When your partner finally arrives, chosen one, the years of waiting will not simply be erased from your memory as though they never happened. They will be transformed, understood in a new light, recognized as the necessary preparation that made the relationship that follows so much deeper, so much more resilient, so much more appreciated than it might have been had it arrived too quickly before either of you were ready to receive it. I want you to hold on to a specific image tonight as you continue waiting for your own dawn. Picture the sky just beginning to lighten at its edges, the darkest hour already passing behind you, even if you cannot yet see the sun itself. This is often exactly where people find themselves right before their long-awaited breakthrough, closer to the light than the surrounding darkness would suggest. Standing at the very edge of a morning they cannot yet fully see, but which is undeniably approaching. Consider, too, the story of the Samaritan woman at the well, a woman who had lived through disappointment after disappointment in matters of love, 5 failed marriages behind her, and a current relationship that carried its own complications. Her life, by every external measure, looked like a long unbroken night with no dawn in sight. And yet it was at that very well, in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, that she encountered Jesus, and her entire life was transformed by that encounter. Dawn arrived not after she had fixed every broken piece of her past, but in the very midst of her brokenness, meeting her exactly where she stood. This is important for you to hear tonight, chosen one. Your dawn does not require you to have every piece of your life perfectly arranged before it arrives. It simply requires you to remain present, to remain open, to keep showing up at your own well of ordinary life, trusting that heaven knows precisely when and how to meet you there. The night has been long, I know, but morning is not a myth, and it is not indefinitely delayed. It is coming, chosen one, gradually, quietly, the way morning always comes, until suddenly you will look back and realize the darkness you once feared would never end has fully given way to the light heaven had been preparing for you all along. There is a door, chosen one, standing somewhere ahead of you right now, closed for the moment, but not locked and not forgotten. I want you to picture this door clearly, because it represents something heaven wants you to understand tonight about the nature of divine appointment. When Isaac's servant arrived at the household of Rebekah's family, there was a literal door he had to pass through, an invitation extended by her brother Laban, who said to him that he should come in, for why should he stand outside when the house had already been prepared and a place made ready for the camels? This detail matters more than it might first appear. The door was not something the servant had to force open through his own effort. It was opened for him, in welcome, at exactly the moment his journey required it. Chosen one, there is a door standing ahead of you as well. A door representing the moment when everything heaven has been preparing will finally open into your life in a tangible way. And I want you to notice something important about how doors function in Scripture. They are rarely something we are asked to force open through our own strength. Instead, we are invited to knock, to wait, and to trust that the one on the other side will open it according to their own timing and their own welcome. Jesus himself said that whoever knocks, it will be open to them, and this promise applies not only to spiritual matters, but to every area of life. where we are waiting on heaven to move on our behalf, including the door that leads to the partner you have been waiting for. I want to acknowledge something honestly tonight. Doors that remain closed for a long time can begin to feel as though they will never open at all. You may have stood outside certain doors in your own life, hoping for an opportunity, a connection, a relationship, only to watch that particular door remain firmly shut despite your hoping and your praying. I want to gently remind you that not every door you have knocked on was the correct door for your story. Sometimes heaven allows certain doors to remain closed precisely because they were never meant to open. Because what waited behind them was not actually part of the plan heaven had for your life, even if it looked appealing from the outside. The servant did not simply walk up to any household in the city of Nahor. He waited at the well specifically, trusting that heaven would lead him to the correct door rather than simply the first door he encountered. This distinction matters greatly for you, chosen one. If certain doors in your romantic life have remained closed despite your sincere efforts and hopes, I want you to consider the possibility that heaven was protecting you from a door that was never meant to be yours, redirecting you instead toward the correct door, even if that redirection has felt disappointing or confusing in the moment. Sometimes what feels like rejection is actually protection, keeping you from investing your heart in a connection that would not have led to the lasting union heaven has actually prepared for you. I think, too, of Mephibosheth, the lame son of Jonathan, who lived much of his life hidden away, believing himself unworthy of any place at a king's table due to his physical disability and the shame he carried from his family's fallen status. And yet, King David, remembering his covenant with Jonathan, sent for Mephibosheth and invited him to eat at the king's table for the rest of his life, restoring to him land and dignity he had never expected to receive. The door to that table had been standing there the entire time, waiting for the moment David would remember his promise and extend the invitation. Mephibosheth did not force that door open through his own effort. He simply received the invitation when it came, entering into a restoration he had not dared to imagine for himself. Chosen one, the door heaven is preparing for you may feel, right now, like something you cannot yet see clearly, hidden behind circumstances you do not fully understand. But I want to remind you that just as Mephibosheth's restoration came at the appointed time, according to a covenant made long before he ever expected it to be remembered, the door heaven has prepared for you has already been decided upon, already been set in motion, even if the specific moment of its opening has not yet arrived. You are not required to force this door open through manipulation, through settling for less than what heaven intended, or through anxious grasping at every possible opportunity that presents itself. You are simply asked to remain faithful, to remain hopeful, and to trust that when the appointed moment comes, the door will open exactly as it should. I want to speak specifically now to those of you who have grown weary of standing outside doors that never seem to open. Weary of the disappointment that comes from investing hope in a connection only to watch it close before it ever truly began. I understand how exhausting this can become over time, how tempting it is to stop knocking altogether, to convince yourself that perhaps no door is coming for you at all. But I want to remind you tonight that Rebekah's family did not hesitate when the servant arrived with his clear testimony of God's leading. They recognized immediately that this thing had come from the Lord, and they opened their home without delay. When the correct door finally arrives in your own story, chosen one, you will likely recognize a similar clarity, a similar sense of rightness that removes the anxious uncertainty you may have felt at other doors along the way. The confirmation heaven provides at the correct door is often unmistakable, settling doubts that lingered at every wrong door you previously encountered. Stand at peace before the door that is coming, chosen one. It is being prepared even now, hinges being set, the welcome already being arranged on the other side, though you cannot yet see any of this preparation from where you currently stand. Your part is simply to keep walking toward it in faith, trusting that when you arrive, the door will not remain closed against you, but will open in welcome, just as it did for the servant so long ago. Let us return once more, chosen one, to that image of dawn breaking slowly across the sky, because there is a deeper layer to this image that I want to walk through with you now, one that speaks directly to the healing and awakening that must often take place within us before the light we have been waiting for can be fully received. Dawn does not simply happen to the sky. It also happens within us, in the quiet unfolding of inner transformation that prepares our hearts to receive what heaven is sending. I spoke earlier of Naomi's story, the years of healing she walked through before Daniel ever entered her life. I want to go deeper now into what that kind of inner dawning actually looks like, because I believe many of you listening tonight are in the midst of this very process right now, even if you have not fully recognized it as preparation. Spiritual awakening often begins quietly, in small moments of surrender that feel insignificant at the time. It might begin the first time you choose to forgive someone who hurt you deeply, releasing the bitterness you had been carrying, even though the person who wounded you never apologized. It might begin the first catch yourself, speaking kindly about your own life, rather than measuring it constantly against the lives of others who seem to have received what you are still waiting. For it might begin in a quiet morning of prayer, where instead of asking God once again for a partner to arrive, you find yourself simply resting in His presence, grateful for who He is regardless of what you are still waiting to receive. These small moments of surrender are the beginning of the dawn breaking within you, gradually replacing striving with trust, anxiety with peace, and grasping with genuine rest. Consider the story of the prodigal son, a young man who left his father's house and squandered everything he had, eventually finding himself feeding pigs in a foreign land, so hungry that he considered eating the very food meant for the animals. Scripture tells us that he came to himself, a phrase worth pausing on, because it suggests an awakening, a moment of clarity that had not been present during his years of wandering. In that moment of awakening, he remembered his father's house, remembered that even the servants there had more than enough to eat, and he made the decision to return home, prepared even to be treated as merely a servant rather than a son. So desperate was he simply to return to a place of provision and safety. What happened next reveals something profound about the heart of God toward those who are awakening and returning to Him. The father, Scripture tells us, saw his son while he was still a long way off and was filled with compassion, running to him, embracing him, and kissing him before the son could even finish the confession he had prepared. The father did not wait at a distance, arms crossed, requiring his son to prove himself worthy of return. He ran toward him while the distance between them was still great, celebrating his return with a robe, a ring, and a feast, declaring that his son who was dead was now alive, who was lost was now found. Chosen one, I want you to see yourself in this story tonight, not as someone who has squandered anything, but as someone in a season of awakening, coming to yourself, recognizing perhaps for the first time in a long while that your Father's house has always had more than enough provision, more than enough love, more than enough goodness prepared for you, even in seasons when your own circumstances felt like famine. And I want you to know that as you awaken to this truth, as you turn your heart back toward trust rather than fear, back toward hope rather than despair, God is not waiting at a distance, requiring you to prove yourself first. He is running toward you even now in this very moment, meeting you exactly where you stand in your journey of healing. But this inner awakening is essential preparation for receiving the partner heaven is sending, chosen one. Because love received by a heart still asleep to its own worth, still bound by old wounds, still operating from fear rather than security, often struggles to receive love well even when it finally arrives. This is why the season of healing you may be walking through right now, however disconnected it feels from romance, is actually one of the most important parts of your entire journey toward the partner heaven has prepared. You are not simply waiting for someone to arrive. You are being awakened, gently and patiently, to a wholeness that will allow you to receive that arrival with an open rather than a guarded heart. I think also of Peter, who denied Christ 3 times in the courtyard on the night of the crucifixion, and who must have carried tremendous shame in the days that followed, believing perhaps that his failure had disqualified him from any future usefulness. And yet, after the resurrection, Jesus met Peter on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and in a tender exchange recorded in the Gospel of John, asked him 3 times whether he loved him, restoring Peter with each answer, undoing the threefold denial with a threefold affirmation of love and purpose. Peter's awakening did not require him to remain forever in the shame of his failure. It required him to receive the restoration Christ was offering, to let go of the identity of failure and step back into the identity of one who was loved, called, and useful once again. Chosen one, whatever failures, wounds, or disappointments you have carried through your own season of waiting, I want you to hear tonight that heaven is not asking you to remain forever defined by them. Just as Peter was restored on that shore, just as the prodigal son was embraced upon his return, you are being invited into a season of restoration, a gentle surrender of old wounds, a quiet trust that allows you to release the anxious grip you may have held onto your own story, and instead rest in the confidence that God's plan for you has not been derailed by anything you have walked through. This awakening, this healing, this gentle surrender is the dawn breaking within you even now, preparing you fully to receive the love that heaven is sending your way. If you have not yet chosen to remain part of this community, I want to gently extend that invitation now, not as a platform action, but as the choosing to stay at a table where something real is being offered, where the next message is already being prepared for the next layer of what you are walking into, and where your presence is not incidental but genuinely part of what this community is becoming. And if something in this message has moved through you in a way that made you want to pass it forward, there is a way to do that in the pinned comment below. No pressure, no expectation. Only the open door for the chosen one who feels that passing something forward is the right response to having received something. Before I close, I want to mention one more time, gently and without force, the genius wave. Dr. James Rivers spent more than 30 years building a tool for exactly the kind of person you are. Someone whose neurological frequency was dimmed by the weight of a long and difficult season, and who deserves the support of something precise and practical in restoring what was always theirs. If the genius wave met you somewhere in the middle of this message, and you know it is a yes, it is waiting for you in the pinned comment below. 7 minutes, that is all it asks. And what it begins to restore is the clarity, the receptivity, the gamma frequency of the wound breaker operating at full signal, which is exactly what the season ahead is going to require of you. Chosen one, we have walked a long road together tonight, from an ancient well in a foreign land, along a desert journey directed entirely by the unseen hand of God, through doors waiting to open and mornings waiting to break, and into the quiet places of your own heart, where healing and awakening have been gently taking place. And now, as we come to the end of this message, I want to gather everything we have walked through into one final unified truth, one that I want you to carry with you, long after these words have finished. You won, chosen one. Heaven has heard every prayer you have prayed through the long nights of waiting. Heaven has seen every tear, every moment of quiet discouragement, every effort you have made to keep believing even when the evidence around you seemed to suggest otherwise. And just as a servant once walked across miles of desert to bring Rebekah to a man named Isaac, who was waiting faithfully in a field, heaven is even now directing the steps of the one who has been prepared for you, drawing that person closer, aligning circumstances, softening hearts, arranging the meeting that will one day feel, in hindsight, as unmistakably orchestrated as Rebekah's arrival at that well so many centuries ago. I want you to remember the images we walked through tonight, because I believe they will continue to speak to you long after this message ends. Remember the well, the place of divine appointment where an ordinary evening became the setting for an extraordinary answer to prayer. Remember the road, long and uncertain in the moment, yet directed the entire time by a God who goes ahead of every journey he calls us to walk. Remember the door, waiting to open not through your own forceful effort, but through the welcome of one who has already decided to receive you. And remember the dawn, breaking slowly and quietly, both across the sky of your circumstances and within the depths of your own healing heart, until the morning you have been waiting for finally arrives in its fullness. I want to remind you, too, of the specific truths we walked through for those of you carrying particular burdens tonight. If you have waited a long time and wondered whether love has passed you by, remember that your timeline has never disqualified you, and that some of the most beautiful love stories in Scripture required the longest seasons of waiting. If you are healing from a broken relationship or a past betrayal, remember that heaven is not rushing your healing, and that the wholeness you are gaining now will allow you to receive love fully when it arrives, rather than through the guarded fear of old wounds. And if you have felt overlooked, invisible, as though love finds everyone else with ease while you remain standing at the edges, remember Rebekah at the well. Remember the shepherd boy David. Remember the ordinary young woman named Mary, and know that heaven has a long and consistent history of choosing the overlooked and revealing them in due time as chosen. As this message comes to a close, I want to ask something of you. If these words have touched something in your heart tonight, if you have felt even a small flicker of renewed hope reignite within you as we have walked through this message together, I want to ask you to take a moment right now and press the like button on this video. This simple action helps this message reach others who are walking through the same long night of waiting that you have walked through, others who need to hear tonight that they have not been forgotten, that heaven is still moving on their behalf, that their own well, their own door, their own dawn is coming just as surely as it came for Rebekah so long ago. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, I want to invite you to do so now, so that you can continue receiving these messages of hope and encouragement as we continue walking through the stories Scripture has given us. Stories that continue to speak into our present lives with the same power they carried thousands of years ago. And if you know someone else tonight who needs to hear this message, someone who has been waiting a long time, someone who has grown quietly weary of hoping, I want to ask you to share this video with them, because sometimes the very words someone needs to hear arrive through the hands of a friend who cared enough to pass them along. As we close tonight, I want to leave you with a blessing, chosen one. May the same God who directed a servant across a desert to find Rebecca at a well direct every step of your own journey toward the partner He has prepared for you. May your waiting be transformed from a season of anxious striving into a season of quiet confidence, trusting that heaven is moving on your behalf, even in moments when you cannot see any evidence of that movement. May your healing continue to deepen, your wounds continue to close, and your heart continue to awaken to the fullness of love that God has always intended for you to receive. May the road ahead of you, however long it may still stretch, be walked with peace rather than fear, with hope rather than despair, with faith rather than doubt. May the door that has been prepared for you open at exactly the right moment, welcoming you into a love that comforts you, the way Rebekah's arrival comforted Isaac in his grief. And may the dawn you have been waiting for break gently and fully across your life, not only in the arrival of the partner heaven has prepared, but in every corner of your life where light has been slow to reach. You are not forgotten, chosen one. You have never been forgotten. And heaven is, even now, sending exactly what your heart has been waiting for. Walk forward in peace tonight, knowing that you won, and that everything heaven has promised you is already on its way.